showing leaving walls off, and the bottom left image shows that all the walls are moved away from the central piece so that you can see inside. If you are producing a model that you need to look great and be of presentation quality, you might think about putting some lighting in it and leaving room underneath it to uplight into the space. As I mentioned before, we're using a laser cutter, and that's informed some of the way we make some of our presentation or competition models or exhibition models. The models that are more graphic, and these are a few examples of those, and some more. But again, these can be done very fast now. The model on the right there was done in 3 days, and it's only about 8 inches tall. And recently we've done some models that sit on flat LCD screens or on an uplit projected surface, so they're animated. You have a story going on underneath in animation form, with the model sitting on top of the screen laying on its back. So you get even more information out that way. Now, myself and Ivan will go through this together. This is a case study of a particular building. It's the Antwerp Law Courts. This was the competition model, and so I guess that was done in 3 weeks or so.
Yes, this was I think the whole competition was done in 3 weeks.
Yes.
The model probably was shorter, but the importance of this model was to very quickly get across an idea about a building, which is essentially that it's not a boring building, it's a building which has a skyline.
So we started, once we knew we'd won the competition, obviously, we started then again from square one, back to basics, from scratch with working models, investigating the basic geometry.
I think it was such a complicated skyline that it took us probably 2 years to work out how to make the skyline, the actual structures that form the skyline work. Now, there were other things going on in 2 years, of course, but physically to make that image work required many years and these models are part of that process.
These are some models showing how the structural elements within the building were explored in model form. And this image is showing you a model which was actually used for acoustic research into the space before. Nowadays that would all be done within the CAD program, obviously. In those days they actually fired laser pointers at this model to see how the sound would reverberate.
So only after, in fact this project probably took from 7 years in total. So 4 years into the project, we had finally put together all of the information that the contractor needed to build the building, and only at that point are you able to build a model which can be shown to the public. So this model is really a mini-scale version of the building with colour and with animation and the landscape to be something that's publicly available. And as you can see, it bears some resemblance to the initial model. And the building, of course, bears some resemblance to that too.
And that's the end of our presentation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a wonderful presentation, and we've certainly seen that there are many different types of models that exist out there. So students at South Plantation, please pose your next question.
Hi, I'm Stephen Story, and I was wondering what type of modeling is usually the more expensive one? Which one is the cheaper one?
The more expensive one would be the laser cut acrylic models that you saw, the colourful ones with lots of detail. The cheaper ones would be the ones where you're just cutting card, you're putting drawings onto card and then cutting them out. That's on all there. That's kind of I guess the kind of model you would be going for, because you haven't got a lot of money to spend, you haven't got a lot of time, I guess, and you want a quick outcome, and you need to see what the space is like as quick as you can, yeah?
Fantastic. Thank you for your question. Another question, please.
Hi, my name is Legend, and I would like to know what materials do you implement into your buildings to make it environmentally friendly? Thank you.
All of the buildings we look at these days need to have an environmentally sustainable approach. And that includes selection of materials. For many years there are certain products that we won't use. And so, for example, exotic hardwoods, lead, and these are products which, through rarity or in the case of lead, they actually cause harm to the people installing those products in the production process. The selection is based upon the most sustainable outcome. And in fact, until recently, there was very little attention paid to what you call the embodied energy of a building. To make a building, how much carbon are you producing to make a building, and what is the real cost of a building and in its environmental terms. Now that has now been, I think, quite rightly coming to the forefront, and our material choices are represented in that. So, for example, I showed you an image of an airport earlier, and that image, I'll try and give you an example of square feet. That building is in size 12 million square feet in area. Now, 12 million square feet is enormous. I can't even begin to imagine what that scale is. And we had to produce the material we had to find that we could use to do the roof that covered that building. And we were left with very few choices. And those choices had to be sustainable. And in the end, we decided to use bamboo. And what's very interesting about this is bamboo is essentially grass. And we on this building, the biggest building in Europe, it took 1 year to grow the bamboo. And of course, the next year, that bamboo has replenished itself. So there's an example of how a sustainable material has been used because of its availability. Otherwise, it would have been aluminium, or it would have been something which is, in a sense, highly unsustainable in that sort of quantity. Thank you.
That's great. And I think when thinking about building environmentally sustainable buildings, you brought up a really good point. Thinking about the carbon input into actually building the building is something to think about as well, not just the materials that's being used. And pardon me, I'm not an architect, so if I'm off with my lingo, please bear with me. All right. So what advice would you give to the students as beginners? You mentioned using cardboard as a material to make models. What's the first step that they can take once they buy the cardboard? What's the first practical step they can take to actually begin to build these models?
I think the first step is to draw some drawings that are the internal elevations of the space and the plan of the space, and then put those two things together. So essentially take the plan and put the walls on. Simple as that.
Great. So students at South Plantation, did you hear that?